Hi, my name is Jeff and I'm with Vetter Software, and today we are going to work with custom medical notes in Vetter. Custom medical notes are located under Settings, and then within Settings, under Templates, and you can view them here. However, I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to select New Template. Now, when I select the new template, I want to name it, so I'm going to call this one Test Exam Note. This is just to indicate that it's something that's a work in progress. So I'm going to select the type to be medical note, and I'm going to select Save. So you'll notice on the custom medical note screen that you have all of the information about the note on the top of the screen. You have the ability to change the name, so you can select Edit Template. That puts it into edit mode, and you can make any changes to the title that you want. Title is the name. Also, once you have your template, and this is for any template, not just a medical note, once you have it the way you want it, you can always duplicate that template. It makes an exact copy. You can rename it to something else, make a few minor changes, and then you have another medical note or another bundle or another whatever type of template you're working with. It's a very easy way to make a lot of templates quickly. And lastly, you can delete. Now down below, this is where the working area is for this template. Now you'll notice that on the left-hand side, you have the standard sections of a medical note. You'll also notice that to the left of some of those sections is a little drop-down arrow. So for example, if I click on this drop-down arrow here, you'll see that there are some other sections that are below the subjective section. And if I were to say, click on subjective, because, I think, oh yeah, I want a subjective section. And I click on it, say, oh my gosh, look at that. Look at all that stuff that I got. I don't want all that stuff. Never fear. You can always just uncheck and you can start again. So it turns out that if I were to expand the history section, that's where all that extra stuff was. So I could select some of those if I want. I'm not going to. I'm just going to minimize it again so I can work with the stuff I really want. In this case, I want to add a problem section, and I want to add a notes section. Now you'll notice here that I have some custom fields. Now the custom fields are created as a different template type called custom fields. So if you realize as you're going through the setup that you actually want to have fields that do not exist in the Vetter default listing, you can create your own. So I created a few here. I'm going to choose kitty cat meow, which is just a dumb one, but it's an example of how this might work. So I'm going to click that one here, and you'll notice that it adds just down below. And you'll see this one is pretty basic. It says meows or doesn't meow, which again, something you would never use, but it's an example of a custom field. I'm going to go to objective next. Now this is where most medical notes differ. When I expand this out, you'll see that we go pretty deep. We have all of the different systems. If we wanted to go to the subsystem level, let's say we wanted to make this one a reproductive specific note and maybe a male reproductive specific note, I could start selecting those. Centrifuge, cooled storage. I'll choose the volume, concentration, motility, morphology, total. And you can see, again, we go pretty deep. We've partnered with some veterinarians who specialize in reproduction, specifically in the equine field. So we've gotten a lot of very good feedback and information on how to set this up. And we can go deep in a lot of different areas. We work with veterinary cardiac surgeons, we work with veterinary ophthalmologists. So suffice to say that we can go as deep as you want to go in your objective section of your medical note. I'm not going to make this one specific to reproductive. I just wanted to show you that that's an option. So I'm going to eventually create a medical note that is fairly standard, fairly straightforward. But I want to call out the fact that you can create medical notes to any level that you want. So for example, let's say I'd like to have the abdomen section, but I don't need to have all of the individual subsystem information associated with this. I can just choose body condition score and say notes. And I choose the notes, and then abdomen appears and body condition score. And I'll drag body condition score up to the top because that's what I want first. And abdomen appears with a note section. I could do the same thing for cardiovascular. Expand it out, choose notes. Lameness, expand it out, choose notes. So I could go down the path like this. Now, as I mentioned before, I want to make this one fairly simple, fairly streamlined. I'm not interested in going to the system level. So I can just uncheck them, and it goes right back to what it was. All right, so right now I'm left with the body condition score. I want to include vitals, and I want to include notes, but I don't want all of the information for vitals. I don't need to have a separate notes section under vitals, for example. And also, typically, when we do the TPRs at the clinic, we typically take the weight first. So I'm going to move weight to the top. And I'll say that the next thing we typically do is temperature. And then I'm just putting it in order in the order that it's done. But you can choose however you want to do it, simply by clicking on the little tic-tac-toe icon and dragging the field to where you want it, and making the order the way you want it. Keep in mind, you cannot drag the weight field up under the kitty cat meow section of subjective. These tic-tac-toe icons essentially mean that you can move the item around, or move that particular field around within that section. So I can move respiration within vital signs. I can't move it under objective notes. Okay, I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to expand out the assessment section, and I do want diagnoses and notes, so I'm going to select both. I'm going to select plan. And I'm going to select client communication. Client communication is a special field in Vetter. When I say special field, what I mean is it does something more than what the other fields do. So if you populate information into the client communication section of a medical note, Vetter will automatically create a communication record under the client and under the patient, including anything that you put under client communication. So it's pretty powerful. It saves you some time. I also want to call out really quick just the fact that we do provide different diagnostics. I'm not going to include this for real in this medical note, but let's say blood pressure. Let's say this is something that I want to track. We go pretty deep. So we provide all of the different facets of taking a blood pressure, everything that you could possibly want. So in this case, I'm not going to have that. I just wanted to show you that this is something that you could include if you wanted to. So if this were a blood pressure specific medical note, this is probably something you would want. Also, most clinics that use the diagnostics section options, they typically make medical notes that are specific for that diagnostic. Now again, if it's a blood pressure exam, having blood pressure is probably a good idea. But for something that's just a normal wellness exam, probably not. But it's up to you. You can make it however you want. So that's that. We do have a diagnostic section. We also have a holistic section. So if your business performs Eastern medicine, we do provide all of the acupuncture points. We also provide all of the chiropractic points. And we also provide massage option. So if that's something that you do, we do support that. And you can take notes based upon the services that you provide. So just to recap. Create your template under settings, templates, new template, name it, save it. Then come in and start selecting sections that you want to include in your note. Once you've selected your sections, you can move them around and you can change them into the order that best suits your workflow. Last thing, and this is probably most important, you can populate default text into your custom medical note. So for example, I can say under problems, no issues, presented with no issues. That's probably better. That sounds more medical. Presented with no issues. And I'm going to say, does meow, meows loudly. And I will create a separate video for creating custom fields. So that there'll be a link to that in this video down below. For this, I'll probably put something like WNL, so within normal limits, just to have this here, because most of the time it's going to be within normal limits. Now, keep in mind, when you create a medical note from this template, all of this default content is automatically going to be populated into that medical note. But you can edit that medical note as you see fit, and you can make any changes that you want. And I'll show you that in just a second. So I've made that change. I'm going to say for now that that's good. So I'm going to save this exam note. And remember to save, because this is one of the areas where you actually have to click a save button, otherwise you lose your work. So remember to click save. Okay, so that's done. Now I'm going to go to my, my pet. Sure, I'll go to Aston Bond, why not? And here is Aston, and I am going to create a medical note for Aston, and you've guessed it, I'm going to create the test note that I was just working with. So I'm going to go to new record, history, new record, and new medical note. And I'm going to choose my test exam note, and there it is. And the complaint is going to be exam with vax. And I'm going to set the provider to be Dr. Snuffy. I'm going to do save. And here we go. Here's my test exam note. You can see down below that all of the information in that note, as I mentioned before, came from the template. So it includes the text that I included. It also includes everything down here, the correct order, everything else. Now, I'm going to call out that client communication section again, and I'm going to do it by using a content snippet. Now, a content snippet in Vetter is library content that you can populate into Vetter, again, under settings, templates, new template, name your snippet, and then select content snippet as the type. It's just basically text that you can pop into a medical note or into a letter, basically anytime you want. So if there is something that you have to write more than once, it may make sense to put it into a content snippet. So I'm going to add that here, and I'm going to do it by clicking on the medical note tab. I'm going to select add template content, and I'm going to provide some information to the owner, so client communication. So I'm adding it to the client communication section, and I'm going to include the canine diabetes content snippet. When I select add, that information is automatically added into this section of the medical note. And there you are. Now, just to confirm the way this works, when I'm going to actually show you a trick here. I'm going to hold down the control key on my keyboard on a Windows computer or the command key on my keyboard on an Apple computer. I'm going to hold the key down and I'm going to click on the owner name. Now watch what happens on the top of the screen. It brings up the owner profile, and there's James, and I can click on the communications tab and select view communications. Ta-da! July 20th, 2020, 9:51 a.m. Test exam note, July 20, 2020. And there you go. There's all of the information. It actually populated directly into the communication section for James Bond. Okay, so that's that. I close this tab, takes me right back to where I was working. So again, to do that, it's pretty straightforward. You hold down the control key on a Windows computer and tap or click, or you hold down the command key on an Apple computer and click, and it pops it open in a brand new browser tab. It gives you the opportunity to work in multiple places at the same time in Vetter. Okay, well that's that. That's how you create a custom medical note and then use it in Vetter. Have fun. Thanks a bunch for your time.